All right, everybody, we're going to be looking at a flipped classroom video going over our second unit. It's going to be going over Confederation and the Constitution. So those are going to be the two big concepts we look at today. Quick question. This is an easy one, though the term second might confuse a lot of people. What is the name of the second Constitution of the United States? And the correct answer is the one we're living under right now, and that's the Constitution. Yet, not many people know that we actually had a constitution that ran our government prior to that. And the name of that is called the Articles of Confederation. The Articles were written in 1776 as a way for these 13 colonies, now, once they are successful in rebelling against Britain, states, to come together so they can work together and fight as one against the British. It will finally be ratified or agreed to by all 13 states by 1781. Now, I want to introduce two concepts. I hope you guys know that in Illinois, we have a state government that's in Springfield. There's a governor and there's a House and Senate there. So we have this concept called the state government, and we also have a central government. Central government is a good example would be when the British ruled us, it would have been the British. So the central government in the Articles were specifically made to be weak. We're going to address why in a little bit, but please understand that's important that you know the central government is going to be weak. Now, having said that, as we change by the end of this flipped classroom, you're going to find out that our central government will have grown in strength. It'll become stronger. One of the things you're going to know about the Articles is that they were very fearful of taxes. So they didn't want the central power to be able to lay taxes on its citizens. Again, precisely because of what the British did to us. Again, the British, being the central power, gave us taxes. Under the Articles, they're not going to let the central power give taxes. And we changed that in our Constitution. Here's a problem right here. One of the issues is the monetary system. Under the Articles, not allowed to do it, that central power. So the states get to develop their own monetary system, which means that there are going to be 13 different monetary systems in the United States. That could be problematic for trade, for one thing. And you don't want any barriers to trade. You want it easy to trade. But when you have 13 different forms of money, that can complicate things. With an army, think about some of the issues with the army with the British. Remember, the British forced soldiers to be housed in our homes, especially in Massachusetts. They couldn't stand that. Again, central power British had this big army. So they took that power away under the Articles from the central power. The army would come specifically from state militias. Again, trade dictated by the British, so they wanted that away from the central power under the Articles. So they gave that power to states. Again, 13 separate ways to trade based on their own views, and those were the states. Amendments, nothing, no plan is perfect. So, do you want to change it? You might want to, but under the Articles, some of the problems were that all 13 states had to agree. 13 people can't agree on where to go for lunch. How are they going to make these big decisions about the amendments? And so, as we just said, it had to be unanimous, so all 13. That's going to be tough. Now, if one state saw a problem with that change, let's say 12 states realized that central power couldn't tax, that could be a problem. That the central power couldn't build an army, that could be a problem. All 12 could agree, but if just one, that let's say Rhode Island here, didn't like it, they could veto the whole plan, and no amendment would be able to be passed. So you might look at this. So why? Why do we develop this system where the central power is so weak? And look at the parliament right there. That's what we were afraid of. Remember, we have short memories. This is 1780s. We know what happened in the 1760s and 1770s. We want to take most of this power away from these people right here, the central power, which was Parliament in the King's days. So we want to give most of that power to the states. So when we look at the King and Parliament, they had 90% of the power, and the colonies only had 10%. So these guys want to flip it. They want to make sure the states retain 90% of the power, and our new central government under the Articles only have 10. But now we have a problem. So after the war, we have to pay back and during the war, we're borrowing money. So we're borrowing money from our own citizens by selling bonds. So we'll collect the money they give us, and in about 7 years, we'll give the money back plus interest. Problem is, we're having problems paying it back. So you're giving us money, and we're giving you an IOU. We'll pay you back, but the problem is we're having problems finding money to pay people back. Not only citizens, but other countries who are letting us borrow money to fight our war. So in 1782, we begin defaulting on our loans. And you can understand why we're defaulting when the Articles don't allow the government to tax, the central government to tax. But you also understand why the Articles did that. And even if you wanted to change, for example, many states wanted to give the central power the power to tax, but it never passed. Rhode Island kept on saying no. And sadly, during the war, there's a war fighting going on. So business began to slow down. So no jobs. People aren't buying things because they don't have money. There's sporadic trade, plus the barriers that we talked about. Every state had their own trade regulations, commerce regulations, which slowed things down. The monetary system of 13 states hurt as well. And this hurt mercantilism. And so you can see all of those states have their own regulations for trade. And for trade, you don't want barriers. You want to reduce barriers so it's easy to trade, which will help the economy, which will help people working, which means they can spend money and buy new things. So it's a cyclical process. But with 13 different forms of regulation on trade, those are just too many barriers. For defense, we had a huge army fighting the Revolutionary War. Huge. And great leadership for that matter. But now, we only have a standing army of 500. Remember, we were scared of the King's army and what they've done. So what do? We take the central power's power away to build an army. We're depending on the state militia. So we have a standing army of 500 people. And look at our borders. They're huge. They have to protect against Indians in the Great Frontier. They have to protect against the British who are in Canada waiting for us to make a stupid mistake and fail. And of course, we don't even have a great navy. We have a token navy. How many ships? Take a guess. We have a whopping 2 ships. So if we do have foreign commerce trading with France, Spain, these guys might pillage us, and there's not a lot we could do about it. And then now we have problems at home. States have to pay off their debts as well. So what do? They ask for taxes on the farmers. And here Shays' rebellion kicks in 1786. He was just a regular soldier in the Revolutionary War, did his duty, comes home, is a farmer, but then he's overtaxed by his state. So he forms a rebellion, burns county courthouses in protest. Not everybody's on his side, though. Here's Sam Adams, a revolutionary hero himself, says a rebellion against a king might be pardoned or lightly punished, but the man who dares to rebel against the laws of a republic ought to suffer death. And remember, the key word for him in the second sentence, or the second part of the sentence, is republic. We chose people to represent us. If you don't like it, don't elect that person. But you can't rebel against a republic in Sam Adams' eyes. And Jefferson basically says, hey, we should have a rebellion every 20 years. Nothing wrong with this. So all of this is really scaring many of the founding fathers, the people in the Revolutionary War, people who wrote the Declaration of Independence. We're failing at becoming a strong nation. We're a very young nation, and we might die. So we really have to fix things. So to do this, we have to really compromise. Little states like New Jersey, big states like Virginia, they were saying, hey, that's basic, let's have a legislature. Little states said, hey, let's keep it like the Articles, where every state gets one. Virginia and the big states were like, wait a second, we've got tons of people, we deserve more votes. So there's an argument over equal versus proportional representation. There was even a debate whether we should have two houses. New Jersey plan said, hey, let's keep the one house like in the Articles. Virginia plan said, no, let's move it to a bicameral legislature. Since it's based on representation in the House of Representatives, do we count slaves? The South said, yeah, because we have a lot more of them. And the North said, no, because they're really not treated as citizens. So we set up the 3/5 compromise. For every 5 slaves, they're going to count as 3. And in doing so, in this new Constitution, we see an increase in powers of the central government. Some of the problems that we see in the Articles, at least they're reflective when they write the Constitution. They look at the weaknesses in the Articles of Confederation and try to address it in the Constitution. For example, the power to tax. So now this central government will have some money coming in. They'll be able to coin money, which is important. So one monetary system. They're going to be able to build an army. They're going to be able to build a navy. They're going to control interstate commerce and foreign commerce. So as we go over this, things are going better, good ideas, but there are people who don't agree. And the concept here is that under the king, the central power had 90. The colonists had 10%. So we flip that in the Articles. Central power, keep it very weak at 10, and the states get 90. But then again, there were problems like the Constitution is fixing, of the no army and navy and no interstate commerce. So now we're fixing those. But some people are freaked out by this concept of an increase in power of that central government. But yet this federal government will be frozen at 50. So you have the Federalists who are basically saying, hey, we like this new idea. The Anti-Federalists are scared of that central powers number going from 10. They don't want it increased at all because they don't want it to go back up to 90 where it was the king. But the Federalists are saying, guys, we're going to freeze it at 50. It's going to be 50-50. Don't worry about it. So now it has to be ratified. So if you look up here, there are some states like South Carolina and Georgia, Maryland, New Jersey, Delaware who are going, all right, let's get this thing passed. But there's places like Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York, especially Massachusetts, where this rebellion began in the first place. They're scared of giving the central power too much leeway, too much power. Obviously, as we just looked at, the North and middle colonies were, a little skittish about this. The South were saying, all right, let's do this. But the Federalists will end up winning today because we do have the Constitution. So they do have some advantages. One, they're the upper class. They're going to have a lot of money. Federalist papers will be written during this time, which is an explanation of the Constitution, section by section, article by article. So there's a lot of communication. George Washington, the man of the Revolutionary War, the hero, is a Federalist. He believes the central power has to be increased. And then finally, when it does come to vote, the people who do vote only come out 25% of the people who are allowed to vote. So not everybody who's voting, who's potentially vote, are doing so. All right, please remember this as we move on. Have a great day, guys.